Okay, this is the Affordable Housing Committee meeting of Wednesday, June 11th. We're meeting in the second floor conference room of the Old Town Hall, as well as via Zoom. We do have a forum. It's now 7:03 p.m. And so I'll turn things over to you.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening, everybody. Great to see everybody. Steve, great to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you guys.
So first item of business, I guess, is the minutes of the May 14th meeting. Does anybody need a copy or? Everybody's got a copy? Anyone like to, move or approval? Everything okay?
Move to approve the May minutes.
Okay. Motion from Deb, second.
Second.
Second from Janice. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We're through item number one. Yay. So we can now move on to our old business items. Status updates. Mark?
Okay, sure. Well, we do have I don't need to go through all the, hopefully, the applications that are currently sitting before the Planning and Zoning Commission. They continue to meet weekly. They have been doing so since earlier this year, January.
If you can hear me, you guys have frozen.
What's that?
He said we're
You're
frozen.
frozen. You're frozen.
You're back.
Are you
I'm back.
okay? I see you now.
Oh, I'm good.
Okay.
You guys,
All right, so Planning and Zoning continues to meet weekly. They're working their way through the backlog of applications, many of which were filed under 830G prior to our receiving the moratorium. And the moratorium has since been approved. It comes through 2029. So, there's a long list of them, so I think they're continuing to meet weekly probably through, it looks like now, mid-August. The ones that are currently before the commission is 441 Post. You'll recall there was a mixed-use proposal.
By the cigar store.
441 is the Circle Inn, so they proposed to build a new hotel in a residential development, and they had a companion plan, an optional Plan B, if that didn't work out, which was a
Why did
much
they do a
larger.
Plan B? I was trying to figure out, when I was reading the TPZ stuff, why did they do a Plan B?
I think to really protect their interest, they feel like they were going to give the commission an option. Here's one with a hotel, or here's one with 100% residential, much larger.
Oh, okay.
I think the Planning and Zoning Commission, I think this board, other groups are supportive of the mixed-use development project with the hotel. That was approved, but it was appealed. So, they're considering this other application as they did with the Mark Andres project on Post Road. So it's a similar situation. So we have 3 of those, which just add to TPC's workload. So they have considered, Plan A, Plan B alternatives for
So one's 830G and one's not?
one's an 830G. So again, the burden of proof on an 830G is with the town through its Planning and Zoning Commission to demonstrate based on the evidence in the record that there are substantial issues of public health and safety that outweigh the need for affordable housing. So it's a much heavier, the burden rests on the town to demonstrate that through evidence in the record. That's a higher burden for us to bear than the other one, which is more discretionary. So I think that's why, both of these, all 3 of these applications have Plan A, Plan B scenarios. So those are 21, 77, 79 Post Road, which is Mark Andres' project, which we had supported, again, approved. Mixed use, they took the food service piece out, or like a restaurant, try to alleviate some of the concerns with regard to parking and traffic on that street. It was approved by the commission, again, appealed by the neighbors. The commission did approve the Plan B, 830G, 60-unit development. So
60 units.
60 versus 40.
The
So,
backup, the backup.
Yeah.
In other words, if you don't, if you're not approving my discretionary, here's a backup 830G to protect my investment.
right.
But 60
Yeah,
units?
60 versus 40. Yeah, which is not as, we're talking the 441 was, I think, 270 versus
Right.
470. So, it's 478 units. So it's
The backups are not pretty.
kind of pick your
No.
poison a little bit. So,
Is that a whole nother story then on Marc Andres to get 60?
I think it was an additional
Yeah.
story. Yeah. And, exclusively residential, so commercial piece was taken out. So I think the next one coming up would be 108 Bureau. I think they started the application for Bureau Street, which is St. Ambre's School. They have another project being proposed for 1477 Congress Street, which you probably saw something in the newspaper about.
That is such a weird location. I
It is
never
a-
looked at that. It's so
Weird
odd.
location.
Where is it?
It's kind of behind, so you make that, you go under the overpass, if you would normally go left to get on the Merritt, you go right, that's still Congress Street.
Uh-huh.
And it's right behind, I don't know, I'm trying to think what's on the corner there. It's like it's like a residential
Right across
house.
from Barcelona, right?
Yeah, across the street,
Yeah.
right, across
Okay,
the
from
street.
Barcelona.
Is it a school? I forget. A church? A small church over there?
I don't know what's on the.
It was it's a single family.
Family home right on the corner?
Oh, yeah.
Or there's you're coming off the highway, so it's on the right, to the right of the highway when you're coming southbound. Right?
Going southbound.
So
Never
it's-
take, yeah.
There's actually a house a little bit two more down that's like a junkyard kind of, it looks like. So, which I never noticed before, and we take that route all the time to my brother-in-law's, so.
I haven't been there in a long
Yeah.
time.
So I guess the only silver lining to all this is that if we look at the projects that are currently under construction or have been completed, as well as those likely to begin construction later this year, we will have accumulated 276 out of the 329 points that we need for a secondary moratorium. So we're only 50 points shy. And that's based only on those projects that are either currently under construction or likely to begin construction this year, not counting the whole multitude of projects that have been approved. So I feel pretty confident that within the next 4 years, we'll have sufficient number of points to qualify for a secondary moratorium, which would extend it another 5 years beyond 2029. So, it's uncomfortable right now. We're going through this, but at least I think beyond, for the foreseeable future, once we get through this spate of applications, we'll have more control over how these things progress, what kind of development we want and where it's to be located. So
How many units is that Bronson Road building?
90,
90.
yeah,
And that's an 830G.
that is. Yeah, so the ones that are under construction now, the 830Gs are, as you probably saw on your drive up here, 131 Beach Road, which is a 40-unit development. They look like they might be finished. When I talked to the developer, he thinks they'll be done by the end of the year. He's been very, I've been impressed with
Yeah, it's moving fast
quality of the
now.
contractors, subcontractors, and how they've, been very efficient in terms of the job. The Bronson Road project, probably a little bit, that won't probably complete until, CO until middle next year. But again, 90 units. There's a smaller development on Woodrow Avenue off of Southport. think either they have their building permit, or they've applied for it, but they're very close. They should be beginning work soon.
I mean, there is
That's 20 units?
excavation, I think, is going on.
Okay, so then maybe they I didn't check it
I
this,
think there's excavation going on.
so they probably have their foundation permit. There is one.
Cancer Center place, right? The
What's
former,
that?
the former cancer
No,
center?
no, this is at the Pease Avenue,
Exit 19.
Exit
Oh, it's
19,
19, okay.
near where the Chinese.
Oh,
Chinese
Indian.
Mama Chow?
It was an Indian restaurant.
Oh, yeah, right there, yeah.
Indian restaurant. And there was a dog groomer and,
There is a dog groomer still there, or was.
yeah, I think she's gone.
She's gone now.
That weird little corner kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a 20 unit
Area for
development.
traffic.
It's
It's
already.
backed up really quickly.
250 Pequot is under construction. That's not an 830G. but
That's the one Jackie was referring
Yeah,
to.
the former cancer center place.
That's 20 or 22, no, 18 units.
20, no, it's 18 units, yeah, 18 units.
Two or
That's
four.
like 3-bedroom though, that's fancy.
Yeah, that's a very high-end place.
And we would, the ones over around Fairfield Black Rock train station, the first building number 4 called, I think it's called Creekside now, or at Fairfield Black Rock. They received their temporary CO at the end of May. We have their final CO by the end of June. They're starting to move people in.
Looks pretty nice. I think they did a decent.
Yeah, it's okay. We had some issues during construction with the general contractor. Part of it was, the financing was problematic for a bit. But they worked through all those issues. So they finished the first building.
What happens after the neighbors appeal? What's the next
So
step?
it goes to court. There's an opportunity. So 467 Tunxus was the one, on Soundview.
Oh, by the
Tunxus
Jeep.
Hill.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Upper Tunxus Hill was appealed, but I believe, there's first an effort perhaps for the sides to mediate, maybe reach some conclusion, but if not, then it goes to trial.
The neighbors take it to trial.
Yes.
So they have to initiate the,
Yeah, but we're essentially then, the town in that case would be a defendant, because the commission approved it, so they're appealing that decision.
Well, 131 Beach went all the way up to Supreme Court.
It did, yeah, so, yeah. So we have, again, a number that are in construction, likely will start construction by the end of the year. And, again, we should be in pretty decent shape to secure a second moratorium before the first one runs out. So, again, it's going through this period of time where you have a lot of these 830G applications, but hopefully that'll be the last of them for a while.
so yes, if the moratorium comes in, then there's no even period when they could apply for 9 years, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, that, I don't know that they had that as part of their thinking, but clearly the 4 years for the initial one, I think prompted some to, make an application as soon as they felt they could. Some of the applications are, in my view, not well thought out, or
Yeah.
they seem incomplete to me, so.
So they rushed.
A little bit rushed, right. I've reviewed a number of affordability plans. I've kind of lost track, and some of them, it's not, they can all be fixed, but there's a lot of the same sloppiness and errors that you find throughout, because people are just trying to get it in under a deadline and move in quickly, so. That's where we are.
So Mark, a question on if we got the first moratorium, the second one is kind of queued up. But is HB 5002 going to throw a monkey wrench in that? And different kinds of requirements?
No, I don't see that. I mean, they provide a different, the legislation provided it gets signed by the governor, which is, I guess is up for discussion right now, but it provides a different pathway, I guess, for communities. Frankly, I don't see too many communities opting into that. But there is, if they follow this path, perhaps it's a little easier for them to qualify for a moratorium, but I don't think that really affects us in any way because we're, not only have one currently, but we're lined up based on the existing regimen to receive the second. So I don't see that having an impact.
Thank
I'm not sure that the legislation, I put it in there under new business, but we had, it was tough to kind of follow the legislative process at the end. A lot of, this is not, for those that follow that closely, it's not unusual that some of these things come together kind of at the last minute. It's tough to follow the progression of bills with all the amendments and all that. But the one that was approved by both the House and Senate, the Capital Region Council of Governments put together a good summation and analysis of the bill in terms of its impact on municipalities, which I didn't share with all of you. I can share, which I think, again, gives some indication of what's being proposed. But I don't see, again, there were a couple areas where I have some concern, the parking requirements, the ability to substitute in up to 9 units of middle housing in any commercial zone. But other than that, it has, I think it has more dramatic impact on other communities than Fairfield because we've done a lot of the work already and we have a moratorium. So I'm not sure it's as impactful to us, at least in the immediate short term, than perhaps other communities that haven't done that.
Interesting.
Even the provisions as of right doesn't mean it's a rubber stamp. You still have to present to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Doesn't allow for a public hearing, but it does require a compliance review, a site plan approval before the commission, which they have to demonstrate that they've complied with the regulations. So there is a little bit there, but again, the parking, and again, I think that was modified somewhat from the initial proposal to be more in line with what the Connecticut APA had recommended, which suggested, hey, you have to be able to back up. If you're suggesting a certain parking ratio, you have to have some evidence to substantiate that. So it's not like whatever we propose goes. You have to be able to show the math.
It was no minimum parking requirements.
It says no minimum, but you do have to provide some basis, some rationale in your application as to how, why you're proposing the parking that you are. So
It's interesting because Bridgeport's
I saw that article, yeah, that one
the city
case.
got out, in their new zoning regs, removed any minimum parking requirements. And it's gone terribly, and they're now trying to
Revise it.
to get it in before the change in the state law. I'm not sure if it would serve, I don't know what overrides what, depending on timing, but it hasn't gone well.
I think the parking and the commercial, because we don't have a lot of commercial in Fairfield, and we've been trying to preserve, at least on main thoroughfares, some commercial presence on the ground floor. So I think those were the things that I thought would potentially have the most impact, but even those are somewhat modest in
You're
terms of.
talking about 5002, the H house
Yeah.
bill here. I didn't, you know what, I didn't understand the whole transit-oriented development. Did they source money for that? Was there anything, they're saying that if you do this, then you'll
There's a
get.
promise of it, but you know.
Yeah, I
it's-
didn't
so there's
see anything.
There's a number of provisions in this bill that are opt-in still. And if you do follow this path, either you have an easier path to get a moratorium or qualify for a moratorium, or there's the promise of getting some additional dollars to support, whatever it is you need to do. But
And they made it sound like if you did this, you would get more money, but
it's
then.
like a combination.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of carrots and sticks within the same proposal.
I thought that might be one positive. I mean, not that
It was a little
not that I would
confusing.
campaign
but-
for this, but I think there is one provision in there that I figured we would probably be well positioned to at least apply for
The
the
resources,
the
yeah.
funding, the infrastructure funding.
Well, it has been a consistent complaint of mine to the state that, if you want us to do development around transit, we need some help in terms of making sure the infrastructure is in place to support that effort. And sewer capacity has been an issue on the eastern side of town. Other areas, if we were to look at even downtown, some of the infrastructure might be road capacities, sewer capacity, storm drainage, because we have issues with flooding. Anyone who's traveled on some of these roads at certain times knows that we might have an issue from Mill Plain coming into downtown because the bridge is
Right, Round Hill.
it's
North
very
Branson.
narrow, so there's not a lot of stacking capacity going into that five-legged intersection. So there's a number of areas that in order to realize maybe some of those goals, you would need to make some improvements to infrastructure to support that. So, yeah, we'll see. I'm always a little hesitant because the state oftentimes promises these things and it's a separate process by which they appropriate dollars, and, along the way, sometimes there are other priorities, so those funds never get where they're supposed
They
to.
don't publish it as well as they publish the bills, in terms of what the funding is, because they have to.
When times are going well, it's not so bad, but periodically we have those periods where everyone has to tighten their belts, and surprise, municipal aid might be the first thing to go out the window, so. That's it for that. I don't have much on the Housing Trust Fund either. I looked, and I know the comptroller was out for an extended period of time on vacation. I didn't see any new revenues booked to our account, so it's essentially the same as what I reported last year. We have a balance of about $1.2 million available to commit. So everything's pretty much the same as what.
There's 1 million set aside for backup Carol Martin, right?
We never formally did that. We just, and there wasn't, it was just, again, a soft letter of commitment, which said, hey, we have $1 million in the trust fund. This is an eligible project. But of course, it's subject to the final approval of not just this board, but the Board of Selectmen. So we've done those in the past in order to leverage or access other grant dollars for projects. Greenfield Commons is a good example. So it's it's not that uncommon to provide kind of a soft letter of commitment, letter of support, which we talked about, but no, we haven't committed those dollars formally, nor have we gotten an
What's
application.
the story with the Danbury Housing Authority? I got a call that Carroll wasn't doing Fairfield anymore, that it was turned over to the Danbury Housing Authority. And on there,
Doing what?
wasn't doing the housing authority for Fairfield anymore, just Westport. And and there was something in there, I meant to go to their meeting last night. There was something in their minutes about something they're turning over to the Danbury Housing Authority. No?
I don't know of anything, so.
Yeah, they said that, I don't.
I know that they contract out for, the management of the Housing Choice Voucher Program, because she doesn't really have
Right.
staff.
Right.
So it's
Okay, something to do with
contract
that.
management. But haven't heard that. We can certainly ask.
And I don't know, I just got a call. I was like, I don't know, haven't heard of it. I missed the last meeting. That's my excuse.
Yeah, the Parkview, we're at the same spot we were last month, where we've gotten our environmental assessment back on the 2 buildings we want to knock down. Surprisingly, not surprisingly, there's some PCBs or not, the asbestos in the tile and some lead in the paint. So these are all very minor environmental conditions that we'd identified previously. They're not particularly hazardous, but they do need to be dealt with as part of the demo. So we're in the process of sharing that with demo contractors, get pricing on it. And hopefully we'll be demoing those buildings in the summer months. Steve, did you have a question?
No, I think
Oh,
No,
okay. And Greenfield Street, we're in that 60-day hold because we have a building that's 100, believe it or not, it's 100 years old. It's not a historic property. We've checked with the State Historic Preservation Office, but we have an ordinance in town that if the structure is over 100 years old, there's a mandatory 60-day hold once you get a demo permit.
oh,
So we're waiting for that period to be completed, and then we can knock down the building.
This is 254, right?
Yeah, that's 254. And then I believe I did send you the invitation to the
July 12th.
dedication ceremony and open
11.
house. So you're all invited to attend. Should be, I'm sure it'll be a very emotional
Yeah. I
thing
think
with
this
new
is
homeowners.
exciting.
So it'll be fun. Nothing to report on 980 High Street. Herb, you want to update on the technical assistance grant?
Well, there really isn't anything new since our last meeting. So I think we're still waiting to see what happens in year 2. We expect there will be a year 2. And again, this started out as 4 towns, and we're now up to 6 or 7, depending upon how you count, because we've had
Visitors.
yeah, a couple of
Yes.
visitors. We even had one from outside of Fairfield County who sort of joined up last time. So, but one takeaway from this, for me, in this experience has been that, and you've heard Mark say this before, I mean, we're way ahead of most of these towns. I mean, way ahead. So there's plenty of work to be done, and I think there are a lot of towns in the state that have done a lot less than these towns have done as well. In fact, a lot of towns have, from all appearances, have done little to nothing. And a number of them have not even put together an affordable housing plan. And the directive, you might remember, was do it by June 1st, 2022. And we complied, because we comply. And some of these towns have still not done one. So there's plenty of work for Ben Lovejoy, who presented at our last meeting. Plenty of work for Ben to get involved in.
I think we're trying to set up a meeting with the staff to review what they found in terms of missing middle housing. So we're anxious to see if they've been able to turn up any best practices from either other communities in Connecticut or elsewhere. I don't know that there's any magic bullet to this. I think, it's math in some respects. But, there are some things that we've been experimenting with even here, where we provide, an opportunity to do a modest increase in density if you set aside 1 unit as affordable. So something along those lines. We've looked at, our underlying lot size requirements, for example, in the Residence B zone, and the fact that 50% of the existing duplexes are on non-compliant substandard lots. So it suggests that we might have a little flexibility in terms of reducing the minimum lot size if we wanted to try to increase, make a duplex on a 6,000 or a 5,000 square foot lot instead of a 9,000 square foot lot, as is currently required, without really impacting the town dramatically, because we've already have a number of cases where, that's the norm. So there's probably some things along those lines, but it's always, I'm always open to something else that maybe Tom will turn some stuff up in his research.
He's trying.
He's definitely doing a lot
definitely
of work
trying.
in that regard. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's certainly there are designs that have been done of middle housing that we might potentially share with the community.
Yeah, and was it you, Steve, or was it Brian that shared a report that came out? That was one of our illustrations came out of that report. It was, I don't know, it was Urban Land Institute or Harvard that did it. That was a good study.
Yeah, I think that was Harvard,
Harvard, yeah.
The JCHS
yeah, the Joint Center. Yeah.
Housing Studies.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll keep everybody apprised, but we think it will continue and that we're going to push the middle housing and learn what we can and hopefully through Ben and through the people in the committee we're working with and other outside sources will have something more tangible to report in the future.
Yeah, didn't Tom suggest that we approach Yale to see if we could get the students up there to do some designs for us? Have a little contest or something?
He did, and the thing is, they're working up there with a lot of support, with funding and active community backing. So they're operating. Sorry.
Maine or
Yale?
Yeah.
No.
Yale.
Yale. So they've got their own ecosystem up there, and Yale does. And while they could do studies for us, it doesn't necessarily mean that would work. I mean, they have to understand what our situation is down here, and we're always going to be, I think land prices are always going to be the least common denominator. But we certainly could pursue it. And he's also been looking at some of these places elsewhere, like in Maine. He was in touch with people up in Maine, and was trying to get them to come to. He was trying to get the Reframe Systems people, I guess, to come to our ADU seminar.
I was going to apply for a field trip to Maine myself.
Tom's got a lot of ideas, and we'll continue to work with him and try to pursue those ideas that make sense for us.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you have to start kind of with understanding what the problem you're trying to solve is,
Yeah.
and then work from there.
Yeah, the issue for us, I don't think, right, I mean, Tom's really interested in ADUs, which is great. I mean, we need to continue to get the word out about ADUs, but I'm not sure having ADU design.
Unless they're tiny houses as a separate,
That's
attached structure that you put in the backyard type thing.
Yeah.
So,
But we'll work with Tom on all those ideas.
Tiny house.
So the POCD,
Cool.
the POCD,
yeah, the POCD is on the planning, on their calendar. I think they're tentatively planning to have a status review towards the end of this month. This is planning and zoning. And they're still tentatively planning to have a hearing on the proposed POCD in early September, right after Labor Day, so that they might move to adopt that plan sometime early fall. So I'm hopeful that they'll be able to do that. I know they put a lot of work into this. be nice if they were able to complete that with this group.
Yeah,
Because it's been like 4 or 5 years in the making. So.
yeah, before elections, right?
Yeah.
And working backwards, I think that means that they would have to post the plan maybe even 60 days, 45 or 60 days before September. So if
Sometime
so if it
July.
was September 9th or whatever what the date was, Mark, if
Yeah.
backing up, it would have to be, they have to be, early July, they'd actually have to post the plan, publicize the plan for public review.
Is there anything in these town charter revisions that affect us, affect affordable housing?
I don't know.
They keep inviting comment. I'm like, I don't know anything about the town charter, so.
There
Yeah.
was like a summary sheet that summarized the
changes that-
changes. I skimmed it.
Why is it such a hot?
I
Why
don't
are they
know, I don't
changing
know.
the town charter? Is there something wrong?
Well, I will say there are some issues right now in terms of, we have, just in terms of administration, contracts of more than $10,000 and more than 3 months in duration all have to go to the Board of Selectmen for approval.
That's crazy.
So it's a lot of minutia that the Board of Selectmen is wading through that I don't know.
That's in the charter or that's an ordinance?
It's in the charter, at least in terms of the interpretation by the current town attorney. And this is not something that we have traditionally done, and I'm not challenging his opinion on this at all. But, and I know he's very thorough and very detail focused, but this whole process is really, I think, it's a waste of time. If there is a dollar limit, it probably needs to be adjusted. But, those, we've been pointed to, these are things that perhaps the charter should look at, Charter Revision Commission should look at. So, and then structure of government, but I don't know that there's too much that affects our operation here because we're by ordinance and we're not in the charter.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything for us to worry about.
They worked on it so much when the previous administration, and it didn't get approved. So I
Yeah.
just wondered what's like the
And there was really
controversy.
nothing in there that was going to affect us
Yeah, okay.
last time. Yeah. So we talked about the POCD calendar, affordable housing goals. One thing, Mark and I talked briefly about inclusionary zoning, which is, within the confines of our goals. And then it might be useful for multiple reasons for us to move that along.
Yeah, I mean, let's assume for a minute that the governor does sign HB 5002 into law. There's provisions in there that require municipalities to amend their zoning with respect to parking and conversion of commercial properties for residential. And so there might, and that's for nine units. So there might be a time where the commission is taking up some of these provisions. That doesn't say, for example, that you can't have some other design criteria in any of those instances. For example, I had a conversation with the town planner about the conversion of commercial for as of right missing middle housing type developments. And, you could create design criteria that provides for, in those instances where the first floor elevation would have to be minimum height of 15 feet, so that could be converted to commercial in the future. So in any event, what I was thinking, this might be an opportune time if they had to take up some of these other issues, independent of this. We've been trying to wait for the POC to be completed, but we may want to move ahead independently and propose some changes to our current inclusionary zoning provisions, either to reduce the threshold from 10 units to 5, as we've talked about. Right now, any development that results in 10 or more housing units has to set aside at least 10%. We've talked about changing the 10% to something like 12 or 15. We may want to leave it at 10% and say you have to do 60% AMI units instead of 80%
Right.
AMI units. And if you want to do 80% units, you can do that, but there's a conversion factor, so you have to produce slightly more 80% units to be equivalent to the 60% units required to do. And I also noticed the language here, different than 830G, and they're usually, in the past, the regional, the area median income for the Bridgeport area was very similar to the statewide area median income. Sometimes the state would be higher, sometimes the region would be higher, but they were, relatively close. Right now, I think the regional AMI is 148,000 for a family of 4, and the state is 125 for a family of 4. So there is a pretty big distinction, and the reason I mention that is in state statute 830G, it's the lesser of the state or the area median income. You use the lesser of the two. So we may want to incorporate that language in our regulations. For no other reason, maybe it's easier to administer if everyone's using the same requirements. But there are a number of provisions. There's transit-oriented development park, and there's also a transit-oriented development downtown district. That inclusionary provision is only 10%, whereas the transit-oriented development park at Fairfield Metro is 12%.
I didn't realize that.
Townwide, it's 10%. So again, there's probably some things we may want to look at. In the past, we've had a lot of success meeting with planning and zoning in a planning capacity, like a joint planning meeting. But given their schedule, I don't see that happening in the foreseeable future. And so if we want to move ahead with this, I think we might just have to move ahead with this and let the chips fall where they may. I think some of this, I think the Planning and Zoning Commission would be very receptive to. We'll have to come to some agreement as to what we want to recommend. I think there was a lot of consensus about moving the threshold from 10 units to 5, but we didn't settle on a number, a percentage set aside, or whether we're focused on 60% units. But I did like Norwalk's. Norwalk had, and I think Stanford has, a mechanism whereby it gives the developer some flexibility. So their baseline is 60% units. But if you want to do 80% units, we'll let you do that. You just have to produce a little bit more of them. And, that's, again, perhaps a math problem. We can calculate what the difference is in cost between the two units and then come up with a formula that works within our proposed regulations. But we may want to put that on the table for over the summer and work to refine that. And I know Planning and Zoning is also currently working on, in conjunction with the POCD update, a technical rewrite of our zoning regulations, which is just basically cleaning up all the existing language, which hasn't been done in 30 years. So, this might be a good time for us to put this on the table.
I wonder if 5 might be a bit of a push for some of the developers.
Then they may not be doing it.
They may not be doing it.
Yeah.
And of course, they might not be doing it. So that means we get lots of 4s, it's probably okay. And on the flip side, I think we don't want any more 9-unit developments that skip responsibility.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, they do contribute to the housing trust fund, but
They do,
it
but
doesn't,
much less.
it's not clearly the same.
Oh, it's dramatic.
Right.
It's dramatic difference.
And that's another thing in the zoning regulations, although I'm not suggesting that we change that formula, but that's another thing that we could look at, which is
Absolutely.
it's currently 5 per thousand on new construction and building additions that don't otherwise contribute to affordable housing. So again, we could tinker with that, but I think our focus probably should be on the inclusionary elements because they're kind of all over the map right now. We do have some developments that on their own have come in and proposed, 15%.
Really?
So, like Marc Andre had proposed 15% on his own. So, I think, time is, we could definitely bump that up a little bit. Especially because there's really, again, given where we are with the moratorium and the likelihood of getting a second moratorium, the option of the nuclear option is off the table, so to speak. So, we're really working with developers that will be working within the confines of our zoning regulations to reduce housing, so.
So given the fact that we figure to be in moratorium status for 9 years, does it make sense for us to consider workforce housing and offering some incentives for maybe workforce housing? So maybe thinking 100% of AMI?
Well, you can definitely do that, it won't count in the state's eyes towards your affordable housing inventory, nor towards a future moratorium.
No, God, I'm just thinking,
just have to-
we're doing a lot for people who are at 80, for people at 60. We're not really doing anything for people that are slightly in excess of that.
Yeah, it's 100, 120%. So, again, in the packet, I thought this was a good,
Yeah, that's interesting.
they produced this for all the towns in Fairfield County. We're the same as like a Trumbull or Bridgeport in terms of the area median income, but then they showed what, current job listings, what they're paying in relation to that. So I thought it was pretty well done, so I wanted to share that with you.
Absolutely.
Was there anything else on the goals besides that? I mean,
That was the only one that we continue to work on middle housing. It's just we've been stymied a bit, and we'll continue to work on that through the technical assistance project and report back with everyone. And there are others, I think, once the POCD is approved, that we might want to tackle. Like the DRD or the like.
well, they had proposed essentially the changes that we had talked about with the DRD. It was appealed, but, that the proposal that was approved by planning and zoning essentially reverts back to the former density allowances that were in place in the 1970s and I think early 80s, but
Up to 12 per acre, I think, or
Right.
and it does have an acre minimum size.
it does.
It's hard to find an acre,
Yeah.
now, but yeah, I mean, I think some of these, it seems that maybe a good time to tackle them would be once we've got POCD set. Does anybody feel that there are others that we ought to be?
We did that whole parking proposal, right, where we were gonna.
Yeah, like that too. That was another thing too, with the
Yeah.
focus on parking. We got
Pretty straightforward, like sort of an easy thing to present.
We had done an analysis on, Bob had done a very painstaking analysis using aerial photography to count utilization rates at some of our larger commercial plazas. I think we all know like some of these larger commercial plazas, like where the Bob store, Fairfield Shopping Center. There's a lot of asphalt there and it's never fully parked. But Bob went through and did, using aerial photography over a period of time, actually counted the number of cars that were parked at any given time and then calculated what the utilization rate was. And it's very eye-opening because it shows that, once you get, and the problem with our regulations is that for every square foot of commercial space, we have a parking allowance or parking requirement associated with that. And the point that we were trying to make is that at a certain point, you can stop adding parking. It becomes redundant. You no longer need it. And it seemed like commercial plazas over 75,000 square feet, maybe we can propose, some either cutoff or some reduced parking requirement. And I think his analysis, we've shared that with some property owners and with planning and zoning commission members, and I think it has a lot of merit. So that's another thing we did talk about.
And there is a provision in the POCD that actually somewhat reduces it, but it still seems pretty conservative, as I recall. As Mark said, we thought once you get to a point, you don't need any more.
What did he do? One of his analysis too is something like people won't go someplace if they can't park within 60 feet. Wasn't that the number? So like if you wanted to go run an errand and you saw that parking lot was full and you had to park farther away, you just wouldn't do it. People drive away. So I thought it was 60
Yeah.
feet.
Maybe.
Well, what brought it home to me is when we were having a conversation with the folks whom the BJ's Wholesale Club, and they were talking about putting in a fueling station, and they said we don't have enough parking. I was like, how do you not have enough parking? There's an entire floor that's never used. I've never seen it more than 20% full on the top level, and no one's parked down below. So it just.
I didn't even know.
I didn't know there was a law.
Yeah, well, that's where I used to park to go to the movie theaters. You park down below, and there'd be the entrance, and you take the escalators up, right? But that whole area is completely empty. I've never seen anyone park there. You never have a problem parking on the top level either.
Yeah.
But they have and there's parking behind, so they have over, I think it's 1,200 parking spaces there. And it's like, well, we need a parking variance for this. And I was like, why? So I think there is room for some changes to our regulations on parking that make a lot of sense. So this might be the time to do it.
And once we get the POCD done, then go after it. I mean, we don't want to do anything right now, slow the
Get it down.
POCD down.
Yeah, well, I think the other thing we don't want to do is add to their already heavy burden. So we can talk to Emmeline and get a better sense as to what she thinks in terms of time.
That sounds like a good idea. Okay. Under new business, we had 5002, and we wanted just to talk a little bit about this walk audit that's taking place June 24th.
I don't know, you have to go. I'm not available.
Oh, you're not?
No, I don't think so.
I thought you were, actually. Anyway, we'll get information to everyone. It's the 23rd or 24th. I think it's the 24th. It's it is in the middle of the day, so it's not going to work for everyone, 10:30 to 12:30. But
So as the Bike Ped Committee had reached out and wanted to do a walk audit of the area around the Fairfield Black Rock train station, and get a sense as to whether or not there are needed improvements from a connectivity standpoint for both pedestrian and other modes of transport. But I know the town plan, it is Tuesday, June 24th at 10:30 a.m. And it's based on AARP's walk audit process. So I wasn't aware of it. I got notice.
I think it's part of the H-friendly
Right.
program, which is another thing we'll
But they're-
update everybody on. But
Apparently doing it in a couple different areas where transit stations, Derby, Waterbury, and the Fairfield Bike Ped Committee had said, hey, come to Fairfield. So they're going to do this. I think Emmeline Harrigan, the town planner, is going to participate. Were you going to?
I was planning on going, and I talked to.
Obviously, the Bike Ped Committee members.
Yeah, and I think planning and zoning commissioners were all invited. I reached out to Julie DeMarco at the Bigelow Center because of she has been coordinating the Age Friendly project, and I thought we might want some of the people that are involved in that project to go, either people that were related to the transportation domain that they're working on, or the housing domain that I've been involved in, have some of those people potentially go. So I haven't heard back from her yet, but we wanted to mention to everyone here and, certainly invite them. So we'll get more information to everyone.
I've done a couple of the road safety audits, and they've been incredibly helpful in terms of securing grants, transportation grants from DOT. So I'm presuming that that's the intent here, is to identify problem areas where we need better crosswalks, more pedestrian infrastructure, and the like. And I think they're thinking is the best way to do that is to walk the area around it and with a group. So I think that's the intent here. So just want to let you know in case any of you have a burning desire to participate. But
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of it. I did reach out to Emily, and she clued me in, and then I saw AARP, so I thought it had something to do with the age-friendly piece, so I sent it to.
HB 5002 had a lot on the rent commissions.
Yeah, well, we're already subject to that, so.
Has there been anything new? Has that been busy at all, or?
We do a fair amount of business, I would say. Most of those, we do get a number of inquiries. Most of those we are able to resolve before they get to a hearing. We do have a hearing coming up on the 19th. This will be actually our first hearing this year. We had 2 or 3 last year. I think we had 8 or 9 complaints. So you can see that most of them get settled. When most people call, they have an issue. We talk to them about, their rights. And my suggestion always is, well, a lot of it is, the landlord, property manager is proposing fairly sizable rent increase and I can't afford it. Well, have you talked to the property manager first? And a lot of them, no. It's like, well, why don't you talk to the property manager first and say, make them aware that there is a fair rent commission here in town and that this is beyond. And a lot of times they'll come back with a counter proposal, and that'll, like the one lady who called, she was looking at a $150, $200 increase. Well, typically what we'll see is they'll split it in half. Maybe that's fine for you. If that works, then problem solved. If they're completely intransigent, then we can get involved. And then we reach out to them and say, there is a fair rent commission. We do have this complaint. Wouldn't it be better if you? And oftentimes they do eventually see the light. But we have had a few go to the commission. So it's not horrible, but it is work. And a lot of the work falls on the staff. And so I have, Tom Ivers, brought him on board partly to manage this and also the housing compliance. He's part-time and has a long history working in housing, so he understands this. I don't have to tell him what to do. But it is, so that's when I look at when they do a Office of Legislative Research, they analyze the impact of the bill, and in that bill, they said it would have no impact on municipalities. I laugh because, of course it's going to have an impact. Somebody has to do the work. It's not like we're all sitting around doing nothing. So it definitely has been impactful. But I think we're making a difference. People definitely are, and some of them are affordable units. So we have restricted units, and oftentimes the property manager will say, well, that's what the town or the state told us to charge. No, we do not set the rent. We tell you, you cannot exceed this rent, but you have discretion to establish the rent as long as you don't exceed that number. And so we have people, they're very low income, $1,500, it may be affordable here, but $1,500 a month is more than what they can afford. So we've had a couple of those cases too.
Somebody said there was a rule that's not enforced that rent can only go up max of 15% in the state.
We don't have rent control. There's no rent control
There's
in
nothing.
Connecticut. This is not, they can charge, it's subject to review by a fair rent commission, but there is no cap that I'm aware of.
It may have been part of some of the proposals that were in the housing committee at the state. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, the biggest issue is with the ones where they take over the whole complex and renovate. It goes from being, lower income housing to the renovate to make it market rate. And so those,
and there's some protections, I think, in place now for disabled
There have been.
and also seniors.
62.
That is the other, they
62
have a
disabled,
much
yeah.
lower, so it's, I think it's for seniors, it's fair and reasonable. It's a lesser standard, so we've run into that a few times where we have a lot of the complainants, no, I shouldn't say a lot, but several of them have been elderly tenants, living on fixed incomes. And, they can't afford a, 20% or 10, 15% increase in their rent. Thankfully, again, most of those we've been able to work out. But the 502 just applied that. Now, smaller communities will have to do that. I think down to, is it 15 or 20?
I think 15,000.
Yeah. So, again, I feel for smaller communities because you don't have the staff to handle this. So it does provide for regional. Maybe that's the better option for some of these, to have a regional fair rent commission. Was there anything else on that you wanted to cover?
502, I think, why don't we wait until we see what happens before we
The
spend
governor
our
signs, yeah.
time delving into it. But we just wanted to provide an opportunity for everyone to comment and ask any questions. And so I think once we know definitively what's going to happen, if anything, then we might want to devote some substantial time to
Yeah.
sort of talking about individual pieces.
Talk through it. But in the meantime, what I can do is send out this summation because I found it
That'd be
very
great.
useful.
Great.
And if you wanted to print the entire bill, I did that too. But I was reading through it and I thought the CROG staff did a great job of summarizing the major components.
So Mark,
Anything else?
yeah, did you, maybe the CMDA? Do we-
Oh, yes.
On that?
So, kind of mixed up in this 5002, which had components of the Live, Work, Ride bill that preceded it. There was other legislation that was approved several years ago to establish what was then the Municipal Redevelopment Authority. It was based on the model that was in place in the capital region. It's since been retitled the Connecticut Municipal Development Authority. And so it's an opt-in program, but again, focused on, providing more economic development and housing opportunities around transit nodes and in downtowns. But it is participatory, it's voluntary. So communities can opt in, and by doing so, staff will obviously review to determine whether or not it's a good fit. Your zoning regulations meet the statutory criteria for participation. But if you do, it opens up opportunities for technical assistance as well as additional grant support for infrastructure and other investments. So I had brought this before the Economic Development Commission. The Economic Development Commission was interested and had asked the RTM to look into it. In order for us to participate, the RTM legislative body of the municipality has to approve a resolution indicating their interest in participating. And they can do that after they have had a public hearing. So they're planning to have a couple informational sessions in June. David Couris is the executive director of the CMDA. You may remember David. David grew up in Fairfield. He actually, when he was working for the Regional Plan Association, had worked with the town and its Planning and Zoning Commission to create the town's first TOD as we were building the new train station, TOD plan and regulations. And then he's since moved on, had other jobs, including Port Authority and Deputy Commissioner of DECD, and was working in the city of Bridgeport for a while. So he's been all over the place, but now he's at CMDA. He's coming to the, I think the 23rd, June 23rd meeting of the RTM, the regular meeting, and answer questions. And then I believe the RTM is scheduled to have a public hearing on this on July 10th, and then perhaps consider it at their regularly scheduled July, committee and full board meeting. So that's kind of the thought process. When we talked about it, economic development, we didn't see a tremendous downside
That was gonna be my question.
to.
Yes, the downside.
Well, I think
We have to get-
what has happened is it's been conflated with the Live, Work, Ride. So Live, Work, Ride is a little bit more heavy-handed, more stick-oriented, and this seems to be more carrot-focused. But they're being discussed at the same time. They both involve transit-oriented development, and people were easily conflating the two. So we thought it would be best if we brought David in to explain. I've heard his presentation a couple times. We asked him a lot of questions. I don't really see a huge, because at the end of the day, you either accept the recommendations or you don't. I don't see a huge downside to saying, yeah, we're interested. We'd like to learn more. Take a look at our regulations. If you think we're a good fit, then we'll take the next step. And then if the next step is we want you to do X, Y, and Z, and we don't want to do X, Y, and Z, then oh
You
well.
don't have to?
It's not, my understanding is you don't have to. So,
there's no
so I don't
downside.
see a huge downside
Right.
to it. But again, I think because it deals with the same subject as Live, Work, Ride, which is a little bit more, state-driven, maybe less flexible in that regard, it seems to be, it's very confusing. So I think we're trying to separate out fact from fiction and understand, what we're signing up for. So I just wanted to bring it up because it'll come up in June and July. I don't think there's any, I said I don't think there's any harm in raising the subject. If you said after we do the public hearing, we don't want to participate, okay, that's fine. But I feel like it's our job to bring it
Yeah, at least.
bring
the
it forward and
informational
say,
document.
here's an opportunity, are you interested? And again, I don't see a huge I don't see any downside to participating at this level. Once we get beyond that, and then we're looking at specific recommendations, if we choose not to do them, then choose not to do them.
He's getting a lot of interest from other towns.
Yeah, I think there's about 15 communities that have signed up thus far.
So there could be competition there, and it just seems like any opportunity we can seize that provides infrastructure dollars,
Yeah.
outside support, we should consider jumping on it. But
That was my thought. So we will see what happens in June and July. But I'll keep you posted. This was just, I got a note from the sponsor. This is the proposed schedule, so I assume it'll be noticed. And when they are, I'll let you know so that you can take part if you'd like to.
I had one more thing. I've been talking about the age-friendly Fairfield project. And we had, I think I mentioned at our last meeting that we submitted it to the ARP for feedback before getting internal sign-off. And we got a very, very strong reaction, positive reaction to it. with a few suggestions that we've now incorporated. And Julie was excited to tell us the other day that the town is happy with it as well. So the First Selectman's happy with it. And I think there'll be a presentation to the Board of Selectmen in July. And the objective had been for us to try to get this into the ARP. We already know it's going to be accepted by the person who makes the decision, because he told us it would be. So that's all good, and then we can get on with it. But there are, just as a refresher, and Deb's obviously somewhat new to this, there are 5 domains that we're tackling at this point. So housing, transportation, social engagement, communications, and that communications is somewhat confined to I think, more health and social support, and then also health and wellness guidance information. And the housing one, what I'd like to do is to let everybody see that. You can see the whole plan for that matter, but I'm kind of enthused about that in that it has some interesting components to it. One is reaching out to the public. We've done a lot of that already, but do more in terms of understanding what people are looking for, what they want, what they need. So we've already done surveys and listening sessions, but we want to do more of that over the first year of the program. And then education so people are better informed about what currently is out there and what's not out there. And then an advocacy, both with, working with this group, working with Planning and Zoning Commission and other groups. And then finally building kind of a reference center, visual and physical, I think, that would provide resources to individuals so people could really be better informed than
Nice
they are right
idea.
now.
Sounds great.
And there would be a senior housing, I think part of the advocacy will be affect senior housing, which is one of Janice's
Well,
pet
and
interests.
not for me, I'm not there yet. We don't have parents, so I'm just because I feel it's not like a personal thing. It's
No,
not,
but it's personal,
but
you're
it's
interested in it.
I remember meeting someone, a senior, who had lost her job, and she was wondering what resources were out there for her because she was a renter.
Yeah.
And I just never forget that.
Yeah,
Say probably a good
Yeah.
50% of the calls we get
Yeah,
are from elderly folks.
It's a big
Yeah, I
issue
feel like
for
it's,
people.
yeah, it's really missing.
And I think the key is for us is to engage people who, I like to call them aspiring seniors.
Yep, I'm
People who hope to be
that. Call me
seniors
that.
Is, people who are in their 50s or late 40s or whatever, who want to think down the road,
Yeah.
what might be there for me, for my family down the road, so. But more information to
Right,
follow
right.
on this,
Yeah,
to everyone.
thank you.
Sounds good.
Sounds great.
Steve,
Yes.
Poor guy.
I know you're not feeling that well, but what else, any pearls of wisdom before we?
No, I've lost all my pearls of wisdom, sorry.
Feel
I
better,
don't
Steve.
believe that, but we hope you feel
Yeah,
better.
temper,
Feel better.
feel better.
Okay, this would be a record
I know.
for the committee in terms of closing.
It's summer.
Well, the only thing I would say is July, our usual summer schedule, I think we'll plan on having our July 9th meeting. But August, I assume folks
Okay.
might be okay unless there's something pressing.
Yeah, I would doubt at this point that there's anything that, and we can, as you've said, we could always call a special meeting.
Right, if something comes up.
If we had to.
Timely, but I think we'd likely cancel the August meeting.
So we should probably, that's our tentative decision
Yeah.
then. Is that okay with everybody? So Steve, you would ask about this, I think. So no August meeting, and we'll meet on July
July
9th.
9th would be our next meeting.
And then we will, next meet in September.
Yep. That would be the plan.
Great. See you guys.
Okay.
All right.
Good night,
Okay.
Steve.
Good night, Steve.
Movie adjourned?